morning, forefront. Oh my gosh, only about 10% of you are familiar to me, which I love so much. Because you know what's really weird? It still feels like home. And it's so good to spend this first Sunday of Pride with you all, and to kick off this Pride Month with a series on belonging. This is a really bright light. I just want to make sure my daughter is up there. Are you up there, Maya? Oh, you are. Okay, just making sure. I really wanted her to be here for this one, and you'll know why. And we're focusing, this sermon is on the first of the Beatitudes, which is in the Gospel of Matthew. There's also the Beatitudes in the Gospel of in Luke, whole other sermon. So we're looking at chapter 5, verse 3. You all are just making me really nervous. Which says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Who knows what the word Beatitudes mean? Because it doesn't mean beautiful plus attitudes. Seminary taught me that. Beatitudes, the word actually derives from the Latin word beatus. Beatus is better translated as happiness or joy. The Beatitudes are a set of virtues that we read in the Gospel of Matthew. And Jesus preached this on the Sermon on the Mount. Now, this is important. The fact that it was on the Sermon on the Mount is important because the last time we received a set of expectations for how we should live was also on a mountain. Do you know by whom? Yes! Were you in seminary too? By Moses, and he gave us a set of commandments. So then Jesus delivers his Sermon on the Mount. He preaches sort of like a law, you could say. But it's not just a set of rules, it's a state of being. That state of being is blessedness. Blessedness is the state of being when God's promises are fulfilled. Blessedness is the promise that is now and is to come. Blessedness is a manifestation of God's favor. Blessedness becomes the rule, the expectation. It becomes the assignment that the children of God are set. It becomes Jesus' agenda. It becomes the agenda of Jesus as God incarnate and is said in his manifesto, which is the Beatitudes, to bring God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. And first on that agenda are the poor in spirit. And now this is radical for first century audiences. For first century readers, it was the super religious rule followers at the time who would receive God's favor. You follow all the laws of Moses, all the laws of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, then you were to receive God's favor. They would be blessed. They would be the blessed of their time, the super religious rule followers, those who followed the laws of Moses. Now, this idea was also reinforced by the laws of the land, by systems and structures that were designed to favor those who fit the status quo. So if you could work hard, then you were valuable. If you followed the rules, you were valuable. If you couldn't, you were tossed aside. There was value in people with power, in success, people who had success, and people with respect. Everyone else cast aside. That was the rule. That was the status quo, and all the structures and systems supported that. But then Jesus' kingdom manifesto in these Beatitudes looked different from that first century context. Instead of the powerful and the successful and the respected as God's favored, what Jesus spoke out was that it was the poor in spirit that were God's favored, the meek, those who mourned, the peacemakers, the persecuted, those who hungered and thirst for righteousness. Jesus said these are the ones who are blessed, that have God's favor. Now, for many Christians, poor in spirit has been interpreted primarily as a spiritual posture, that we should approach God with humility, with knowing that we are absolutely nothing without God. There is truth in that. But it's important to note who Jesus was preaching to at the time. Jesus wasn't preaching to people who needed humility. Jesus wasn't preaching to powerful people. Jesus wasn't preaching to the comfortable or those with status and security. Jesus was preaching to people living under occupation, burdened by poverty, burdened by systems and structures that excluded them, burdened by religious and political systems that denied them of power and privilege, of dignity and belonging, the ones who were cast aside. So poverty of spirit for this community wasn't something for them to aspire to. It was something that they were already experiencing. It is the exhaustion that is felt by those who have been pushed to the margins. Can anyone relate to that? It is the hopelessness that settles in when we are rejected. It's the constant questioning and justification of one's self-worth when we are excluded and forgotten. The poor in spirit are those whose spirit has been worn down by injustice, made small, excluded from full participation in community. So who are the poor in spirit today? It was everything in that gorgeous liturgy. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I need to preach after that liturgy. I was like, there's my sermon right there. It's queer folks. It's trans folks. It's black and brown folks. It's immigrants. It's the undocumented. It's those who are incarcerated. It's people who are excluded from participating in an ableist world. It's people who deal with chronic illnesses. It's people with mental health concerns. Because the systems and the structures don't work in our favor. They don't work to our benefit, and they're designed that way. Our needs are cast aside. We are invisible. We are told that we don't belong here. We are illegal. Even some of our representatives would post on Twitter. I know some of you know what I'm talking about. A post that said, blank don't belong in America. We are disinherited completely. Told we don't belong in America, but worse, that we don't belong in churches, that we don't belong in the kingdom of heaven. So today, for 21st century readers, even what Jesus is proclaiming in his manifesto is still radical, because those who were rejected were the ones who were blessed first. Yeah. In that first declaration, the first rule he sets is that God favors those whom society has rejected. The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who have been rejected. That means happiness belongs to us. Joy belongs to us. Go ahead, you can say it. Joy belongs to us. Now, this rang true for me when I got to experience a taste of heaven, the kingdom of heaven, amongst those who had been cast aside. For much of my life, I sought to succeed And as an Asian woman, this is drilled into you. You have to be the best. You have to earn lots of money and make lots of babies. Somehow, you have to do it all at the same time. Right, Sue-Ann? Somehow. I had to be a good worker. And then I had to do it here, be accepted in a country where I was not born. So I had to quietly agree to the status quo here. I had to assimilate, I had to conform so that I wouldn't be rejected. I had to do this to establish my own security and stability in this country and also in my home. This was a limitation of my existence. And I thought that was the way to happiness until I got to witness the joy of living unapologetically. And you know who taught me that? You know. Living unapologetically is a queer term. So I first came to queer spaces as an ally. In queer spaces as an ally, I saw something that I didn't see in other spaces. I saw and I witnessed women stepping out of the confines of gender conformity, of gender expectations. In queer BIPOC spaces, I witnessed the resilience of those who had been burdened by white supremacy and patriarchy. I saw what it looked like when communities came together in resistance of systems that tried to oppress and tried to erase and instead insisted on holding on to joy. I witness the collective efforts to create brave and safe spaces of belonging, this being one of them. For those who learn to shrink for survival, those who were rejected, dismissed, and overlooked, what I saw, that instead of coming to the edge of a room and wondering, can I find space here? What I saw is they were folded into inclusion and belonging. I saw love animated. Not just a word we throw around, but love animated and embodied in the experience of belonging together and creating joy as an act of resistance. And I was like, this is heaven right here. This is the heaven that is here now, and it's a piece of the heaven that we're going to expect to come. And it was true that being in these spaces also helped me to be a better pastor to my queer siblings and to my BIPOC siblings. And I was even more grateful for these spaces because it prepared me to be a supportive parent to my young daughter who was newly out. In queer and BIPOC spaces, I also got to bring all my questions. And I had a lot of questions. Oh, so many questions. Questions like, and you're going to get a kick out of this one. If I find masked women attractive, doesn't that make me even more straight? But thankfully, in these spaces, there was no judgment. Instead, I felt safe enough to ask questions about my curiosities and ask those very awkward questions. I got a chance to cry, to grieve chapters I was closing and things I was leaving behind. I got a chance to stumble awkwardly through the mistakes, through the getting someone's pronouns wrong so many times. But let me be clear, these spaces weren't perfect spaces. I think we have this assumption that the kingdom of heaven is perfect. The kingdom of heaven is brave. The kingdom of heaven provides us soft landing. And these spaces provided soft landing for someone who has been hurt so much and was like a prickly pear. It provided me soft landing. So over time, over repeated exposure, every Sunday, every QCF conference, every ally and queer space that I stepped into, I found something holy happen. I found safety and freedom in imagining that there is another way to live. There's another way to parent, that there's another way to love, there's another way to organize, there's another way to pastor, there is another way to being human. I had spent so much of my life boxing myself in just so I could survive. As an immigrant woman, I learned early and quickly how to make myself small, how to make myself agreeable, and how to fit expectations and how to conform. And I know I'm not the only person who feels that way, right? Who understands what it feels like when the world hands us a script and says, this is how you're supposed to behave. This is whom you're supposed to love. That says, these are parts of you that are acceptable, and these are parts of you that are not, and should remain hidden. But in these spaces of radical welcome in Black and queer communities, I stopped shrinking, and I finally was brave enough to come out to myself. I didn't know straight away. I wasn't someone who woke up one morning and felt different. I was that person who shoved all the questions down deep inside and said, there's no other way. Who rationalized my feelings. Oh, this is just a very close friend. I just really, really admire them. But finally, experiencing the joy of living unapologetically, it just felt so right. The way that God had created me to be, it felt so good. I didn't care if I was a disappointment to the world. It didn't matter because to Jesus, to God, I stood to inherit the kingdom of heaven. And that's not just for me. That's for everyone. And I wanted everyone to experience that. And that's good news because that's what we are tasked to share. When we get a taste of something sweet, what do you want to do? You don't keep it to yourself. So you got to try this. Have a piece of this. You have to tell people, you don't have to earn your humanity. You don't have to earn your belovedness. You don't have to earn your blessings. For so long we thought all the Hail Marys, all the rituals. You don't have to earn your blessings. As you are, you have a place at God's table. You deserve life and you deserve to flourish because joy belongs to you. And happiness belongs to you. So therefore, you have the rights as everyone else. The same human rights should extend to you and should extend to our beloveds who have been cast aside. So these places of belonging that we're experiencing now, this is just a taste, friends. This is just a little piece. There is more to come, baby. So much more. And what's extra exciting is that the kingdom of heaven continues to break through. It continues to break through when we fight for those rights we deserve for our trans siblings, for our siblings who are detained in Delaney Hall right now and all over the state, for everyone who has been told otherwise. When we fight for their rights to belong, the kingdom of heaven breaks through. Even when leaders say you don't belong in this country, even if they say we don't belong in their churches, we don't belong in heaven, our leaders are so afraid of us that they are creating policies and structures to take away our right to exist, to take away our rights to love, our rights to access to the same rights as everyone else. But the kingdom of heaven is breaking through every time we fight for what's named in Jesus' agenda. That's the gay agenda right there. It's that justice and joy is for the poor in spirit. Belonging and inclusion is for everyone here on earth as it is in heaven, not anything we have to wait for. So now we know our queer and trans siblings, many of us sitting in this room right now, are being targeted by legislation. They are being denied passports. They are denied rights to seek asylum in the United States. They've been detained and fearing deportation to nations where they would most certainly be killed. So now our task as Christ followers is to dismantle those structures that exclude, exploit, and displace, and to challenge those ideologies that equate worth with power and wealth. We've been charged with opposing those systems of oppression and replacing them with mutual care and resource sharing, and using our voices and our power to shift the narrative. In this way, we can bring those pockets of heaven, what we're experiencing here, we can bring them to our workplaces, to our schools, for many of us, to our families, to our neighborhoods, and to our legal system. The poor in spirit right now, and I'm not playing Oppression Olympics, the poor in spirit that we're seeing on the news right now are our siblings who are on labor strike and hunger strike at Delaney Hall. And so I wanted to read some of the letters that they've written to us. And you can access these letters by clicking on the QR code. You can see they've written 4 sets of letters. You can read them just to get first eyewitness of what's going on there, because people will say a lot of stuff. But this is some of what they've shared. Since the strike began, we have been subjected to reprisals, discrimination, mockery, mistreatment, and threats, mainly by GEO staff. They constantly threaten to deport us, transfer us to punishment units, and move us from one detention center to another. They take photos of us in the dormitories without our consent and tell us we have no rights here. The administrator wanted to speak with the leaders of the hunger strike to identify them. They were upset when we told them there was no leader and that the strike was a collective effort. That's why they took retaliatory action against the young man named, and it's been crossed out. The GEO staff tried to take him away in handcuffs, which all of us, seeing the injustice, wanted to prevent by peacefully blocking their path with our hands raised so that they wouldn't take him away. In return, we received from them beatings, pepper spray, and from ICE, a riot squad came up spraying pepper spray throughout the facility, causing many people to be rushed to the hospital, one due to beatings and others affected by the gas. To this day, we haven't heard anything about those people. And as a result of this, we feel psychologically impacted and are plagued by the fear that they might carry out their threats for no reason at all. The conditions in this prison are not fit for human beings over such a long period of time. Medical neglect, water unfit for consumption, food that is past its expiration date and in poor condition, bathrooms that are unusable, and ventilation systems that have never been maintained. And because of this, we are constantly sick. These are our siblings. If you're online or on the chat, you'll see a link to the Delaney Hall Toolkit for all the ways that you can support so that we can, in our own way, with power and privilege that all of us have in this room, can bring them a piece of heaven. And if you don't have the funds, a really simple act of solidarity that you can do right now when we finish up today is you can call your member of Congress and you can demand no more funding to ICE and call for the closure of for-profit detention centers throughout this nation. I want to invite the band up right now and share that actions like these to stand in the gap for others is what pride is all about. Yeah. When the poor in spirit receive the kingdom of heaven here and now, that is pride. To bring the kingdom of heaven here on earth so all who've been rejected can experience dignity, can experience restoration, can stop hiding and start flourishing. That is pride. And so this is my prayer, if you'll bow your heads with me. Heavenly Creator, we know what it feels like to be in this state of poor in spirit, where the whole world feels like a weight on our shoulders. But God, you said that blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So wherever that blessing is embodied in the phone calls we make, in the donations we make, in the ways that we have hard conversations with people who think otherwise, let the kingdom of heaven break through so your promises can be experienced now and for the days to come. In your name we pray. Amen.